Hey friends, welcome back. Today we're talking to Levi Lusko, author of a book, Blessed Are the Spiraling, and a bunch of other great books. And this is an episode, it's a little bit different than what we normally do.
Yeah. We kind of just went all over the place in this conversation.
It's funny, this book is called Blessed Are the Spiraling, and I feel like this was a spiraling conversation in that we did go all over the place.
Well, and at the very beginning, it's going to give some context, I think, where he talks about the statue of David. And so listen to that, because to me, it's like we're looking at a bunch of different things from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it because, you know, we talked a little bit about my mom passing and the grief that he has walked through himself. And I think he shares a lot of wisdom on that, which is, you know, just helpful to me. Not knowing anything about grief, that was helpful to me, just to listen to him talk about it and pass on some wisdom. But then also, I feel like so much of this does apply to our finances.
Yeah.
This whole spiraling idea. I have definitely spiraled with money before.
That's so common. Like that's so common with people's finances. If you're listening to this, you know what we're talking about.
Yes.
But if you don't know who Levi is, so he is a pastor, founder of Fresh Life Church up in Montana. I think they have locations in a whole bunch of different states. His wife, Jenny, is an author as well. They've just written a bunch of books, like really a lot of life-changing stuff. And so...
Well, and they're walking it out.
Well, yeah, and specific to what we're talking about in this episode, primarily talking about grief and how to move forward in the midst of what God has called you to do while feeling that. They have been through, they've been through some stuff, man. Yeah. And I'm not going to, I'll let you listen to get some of the detail there, but anyway, if you are dealing with grief, trying to, you know, move forward in that, you know anybody who is, definitely check out this episode. And our prayer is it's going to be a really big blessing to you.
Yes.
So with that, let's get to it. Here's what's going on. So we're going through a little bit of this season with the grief stuff that, you know, you talked about in this episode, or this, what you preached on yesterday, really. And what I think you touch on pieces of in this book, and I think you have in some of your other books. And so anyway, so I'd like to just kind of chat a little bit about how to move forward in life when God's called you to do something, how to not get paralyzed in the midst of in that season, right? And so where should we go? Do you want to give any context, or should we just kind of dive in?
So I lost my mom just over 2 months ago, and it was fairly quick. And what I mean is we had like 4 months, and then she passed away. And then I have never dealt with grief like that. Like, I've never dealt with grief before. So this is all completely new to me. So listening to your message yesterday was really, or that you spoke yesterday, was so wonderful to hear someone else talk about it in a way that is so God glorifying and God honoring, and also reveals more of him. And I would love for you to just talk about that statue of David and how you saw it and from the different angles, because that was really such a revelation to me.
Okay, yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. Now, the statue of David was built out of a 12,000-pound block of stone rejected by multiple builders who said that there was nothing that could come out of it. It was 17 feet tall, and Michelangelo saw potential for a statue to emerge from it, where two others had attempted and said, no, this can't become David. This cannot become, they called it the giant. The statue was called the giant because it was so big. He knew that he could work with the gouge even. There's a massive gouge in the middle of it where someone had drilled in too deep, but he knew he could figure it out. So he turned that into David's hips, but he had to swivel David's hips, which is what he wanted to do anyway, because Michelangelo believed in something called contrapposto, which is a counterpoised stance, where you lean all your body weight on one foot. And it's when you see a human who has all their body weight on one foot, it tells you they're about to take a step. Only the way Michelangelo loaded up David's foot, his shoulders are almost pivoted in a different direction. So it's like he's about to take a step, but his shoulders are over here. He's holding a slingshot over one shoulder. He's got the stone in the other hand. His look is fierce. And the moment is the moment just before David's about to throw the stone at Goliath. And so everything about the statue has movement. And Michelangelo said he didn't want the statue to ever be put with its back against a wall or in a corner. He wanted it to be where you could view it from all 360 degrees. And he calculated over 40 different viewing angles that would be needed to take the entire statue in. So when we went and visited it, and obviously you can tell I'm a little bit of a nerd about this and anything I'm interested in. I read this book called Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone, all about Michelangelo. And when I walked up to it, the tour guide said, stop back and notice how immediately the statue invites you to take a lap around it. And you do. And it's almost funny because every time you move, it opens up a new potential for the statue that you see, but it also makes you want to go back to the one you were at and get to the other side. So like you never can feel like I've absorbed the statue. You kind of have to spiral around it to take it all in. And to me, that's such an important metaphor. First of all, that in life we get handed blocks of what feel like insurmountable weights that we can't handle. Grief feels a lot like that. I've got this 12,000 pound block of sadness on my chest and I don't know what to do about it. But of course, there's an angel inside somehow. That's what he kept saying. He said, there's an angel inside. I need to free it. And his chisel freed the angel. Then he also said, someone said, how did you do it? And Michelangelo said, I just removed everything that wasn't David. And as soon as I removed what wasn't David, he sprang out. And in our lives, of course, God's trying to do all of that. And part of how he does it is through grief, is through hard things. I mean, that's the message of the book. That's the message of the New Testament. Jesus introduced this countercultural kingdom by saying, blessed are you when you're persecuted. Blessed are you when you mourn. Now, Linda, you can tell me better than anybody right now. It doesn't feel blessed. You don't feel blessed to mourn. You feel like your soul's on fire, like your lungs are full of battery acid, like your veins are full of liquid lead, like your legs want to run with adrenaline, but there's nowhere to go. You think of 1,000 things you wish you could do over. You cannot believe the infinitude of the chasm of what's about to be, which is your life without the person you love anymore. Your fists ball up, but there's no one to punch. You run out of tears at a certain point, and then you feel bad for that. And part of the solution, I believe, when we're spiraling, is to believe in faith that we are blessed. And then what you're talking about that I referenced yesterday was the way that the viewer has to spin around David to take it all in is to me a parallel of the angels in Isaiah 6 and in Revelation 4 that are always encircling the throne of God and never stop crying out, holy, holy, holy. And the only reason I can think that they would continue to spin around him in that way is that no one angle takes him all in. And it takes much more than 40 different perspectives to get all of the infinitude of God into your heart. It will take all of life and then 10,000 years just to get the first glimpse. And I don't think that the angels intend to keep spinning. I think they take a lap and they see such delight that they, in ecstasy, declare to one another, holy, and then they have to keep moving to keep seeing something new. And so I think part of the way we respond to our spiraling into grief is the spiraling into worship and letting God show you something new of his character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I love that because it does feel like there is sometimes a spiral, and it's not just in grief. I think this works in several different areas of our life where we're like, I'm spiraling. I just said this in the last week, I'm spiraling. And the idea of redeeming that and showing how the spiraling, there's actually something really beautiful in it. I just love that metaphor. That was just, wonderful.
Yeah, spiraling comes in all shapes and sizes. I think you spiral spiraling means disequilibrated. That's how my counselor uses it. He says, anytime you feel you're off kilter, you feel like you're not grounded, you don't feel yourself, you don't feel bright in your eyes, that can come, not just through bad things, that can come from a good thing. I know someone who sold his company for what he said, in his words, would cause his kids and his kids' kids to never have to worry about money. And he said it's the most empty he ever felt in his life. And he always set out to scale the company, to sell the company. And yet it was now this false finish line that he had arrived at that he felt like, wait a minute, I thought this would feel different. An empty nest can make a spiral. Getting married can make us spiral. I mean, there's a million ways. For me, a big season of spiraling came through me hitting the age of midlife, 38 to 39, 40. That window was really tough because I had just gotten used to being a young person, and now that was ripped out of my hands.
You had just gotten good at it, right?
Or maybe stopped being bad at it would be the better way to put it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a bunch there, but okay. I want to hit on a little bit more of the grief stuff. And, a lot of people know your story and know that you guys went through one of the hardest things to possibly endure in regards to all that. And so so in my mind, I put you in a position of authority because you're someone who has come out the other side, like you went through the fire, and whether or not you feel like you've smelled like smoke, like, when I look at you, I look at the fruit of your life, like it certainly appears that you guys haven't smelled like smoke, and you've taken this thing that the enemy meant for harm. You're using it as a battering ram back at him, And so I guess what I'd love to ask you is just, given that authority that the Lord has, endowed you guys with through this thing that you went through, what advice do you have for those who do feel like they're stuck and they're paralyzed and they're not moving forward and don't know how?
Well, thank you. I think it's easier to see in other people what God's done than maybe it is to see it in your own life. Because what I do believe what you said is true. There's authority, there's victory, there's a testimony of overcoming, but there's also so much of a mess and so much of process and so much that's 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards. When it comes to grieving, you go round and round and round and round and round. It really does feel like spiraling. Now, the good news is you can spiral up, not just down, like we talked about a minute ago. And maybe the impetus to worship is there from our pain that it wouldn't be there any other way. Maybe the reason Psalms says that God is near to the broken heart is because we would not crave him to be near to us if we didn't need him like we do when we're grieving. So maybe that's the mercy of grief. But we lost a daughter in 2012 at the age of 5. She had an asthma attack and died. And that grief was, as you referenced, impossible. How do you bury a daughter? I never could have been that person. I never could have survived that, but for the grace of God who sustained us in that. Now, flash forward to 2024, and my father died, who was my best friend. We spoke every day, best man at my wedding. We were together constantly. We did life together. We had much more of a best, like a peer relationship, but he was also my dad. And that was, in my mind, going to be easier because of my experience, but it was tragically not so. You don't get a punch card for grief. It's not like Subway where you're 6 sandwiches free, because every relationship is unique. So even though in my mind I'm a grief veteran, I was a novice at grieving my father. And like you experienced, Linda, the parent loss is very hard, very, and no one prepares you for that. You hit it one day and you're like, dude, I don't feel prepared to be an adult, much less be an adult with no dad,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, same to you. Like after she went to heaven, I was like, I went to my friends and I apologized for not understanding, because I was like, I didn't know what you were going through. And I wish I would have, because no one prepares you for it. And I don't know that there's anything that really can, but it's just, we just help each other walk through it as it comes,
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry for the loss that you've gone through. And I'm so grateful that you didn't just stop in the middle of it and just stay there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That you sought the Lord in it. I do have a question that I feel like, I've talked to people that have thought this. I feel like I have landed somewhere safe with it, but I don't know that I have any words to share around it. And I'm curious if you do. So one of the questions that has been asked to me is basically, how could God let it go this way? And especially in the case of your daughter, I'm not familiar with the story with your dad, but especially in the case of your daughter, it's like you've given your life to the Lord. I'm sure your daughter was loving Jesus, just being that sweet little 5-year-old. And where have you landed with that of like, how can this still happen?
Yeah.
And seeing the goodness of God within the context of all of that.
Yes, I think that's an important question. I think anybody who is not feeling some of that is not paying attention. You can't sandblast your soul enough with Romans 8:28 to think that this is great. Like, obviously,
Right.
if he's the God of miracles, if he's the God of the sun standing still, and he calls Lazarus out of the grave, there's some sense of like, what the heck? For me, the day that my daughter died, I spent the whole day writing a Christmas sermon because she died 5 days before Christmas, and my dad died the day after Easter. So as a pastor, I now have these two holidays that are sort of hard to not be around for. You want to punch out and just be on a vacation or something, but Christmas and
Right.
Easter, man, they're there. And so now I've got these memories or jagged holes. The thing that helped me the most, Linda, was one day after my daughter died, we made it through Christmas. We had her funeral the day after Christmas, the 26th. And I was driving down the road and I was full of anger and full of almost, it was actually more than anger. It was like rage. Like, I felt rage that my daughter was gone and I couldn't get to her and I couldn't, hug her and I couldn't hold her and I couldn't talk to her. And, it's like they say, if you cut an arm off, you'll have pain in the arm that's not even there. It's like a phantom sensation.
Mhm.
I had this phantom connection to her that was not there anymore. And I was driving right by the hospital, actually, where she was declared dead. And the anger was so intense in my chest. And I felt like I said to God, I'm so angry. And it wasn't an audible voice back, but I felt like what God said to me is, Levi, I'm angry too.
Mm.
I'm angry too.
Hmm.
And my anger met his anger. And I realized I wasn't angry at God. I was angry with God. And that changed everything because
Wow.
he never wanted death. He never wanted sin. He never wanted the thorns and the curse. That's why he told Adam and Eve to not eat the tree. And I saw in my mind all the way back his broken heart when Adam was hiding naked and God said, "Where are you?" God was saying, I didn't ever wanted this to happen. I never wanted brokenness and death. And even then, he knew my daughter was going to die as a result of not his plan, but the devil's plan, and a result of the curse. And all of the asthma and cancer and every other car accident and stroke and dementia and Parkinson's, all of that released from that one forbidden bite. And God's been working to overcome it and thwart it since then. And he will eventually remove the curse entirely. And my daughter and your mom and my dad and I will live in, perfect bodies forever. He will win in the end. This is just one of those results of that, a fractal of that he rages against too. And that's why he sent his son to die on the cross and rise from the dead. And one day he'll conquer death forever. And he's already planned out his victory speech. Oh, death, where's your sting? Oh, grave, where's your victory? I thought you had something, Hades. Like, it's so punk rock that he's already planned his taunt. So I guess for me, what helped with why was the understanding that God rages against death too, and I'm angry with him, and he's going to do something about it. And so that's where I sit. It's this theological net that I can fall into in my hardest moments of the sovereignty and the redemptiveness and almost the vindictiveness of God, who's going to conquer the last enemy, which is death.
That is beautiful.
It's really good. I love that. Just that idea, instead of being angry at God, being angry with God. Like that's just cool. That's really powerful.
And between now and then, there's more question. That doesn't cure it all. I still wonder why. I read in the Bible that he raised Jairus' daughter from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
I read that he raised Dorcas from the dead in the book of Acts. He could have raised your mom. He could have touched my dad. I prayed with faith for her to rise from the dead. She didn't. I prayed for faith for my dad to get up out of hospice, and he didn't. But Charles Spurgeon said, if you ever ask God for silver and he chooses to not give you silver, it's because he wants to give you gold. If you ever ask God for gold and he doesn't give it, it's because he wants to give you diamonds. He goes on to say, anytime God doesn't give you what you ask for, it's because he wants to give you what you don't even know you need. So I have to believe that there's some reason, because he had the power and chose to not use it, that means that he has something else in mind. So I want to see what that is and keep believing. And I don't want to get mad and get blocked and get stopped between now and then. Because I know when we look back from the perspective of heaven, we will say, I know as I'm known, and he did all things well. So we just have to trust him between now and then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I feel like even too, it's been helping me. I've been trying really hard to focus on where I saw him throughout the process. Because it wasn't very long. It was like 4 months or something. But looking back, I can see where he was showing up in just what was really a miserable situation, you know? And so when I think about it that way and then realize like this was never really his plan. Like
No.
the enemy came in, wanted to ruin things for us, and he's, really working hard to make that happen. But how can I see that as God and I are still on the same team, and how does he view this rather than me against him? Because I feel like if I really believe that he is for me, and if he is for me, then who can be against me? Then that makes this whole thing a lot easier and changes the way I feel about it and the perspective. I mean, still like going through the process, like it's not that I'm not sad. It's just that I don't feel like I'm mad at him, like you said.
Yes. Yeah, and that's so helpful, because to view it as like a failure of faith. I think that would be the worst way to look at it. Like, oh, had I had more faith, this would have happened. Because, even Lazarus had to die again. So until the New Jerusalem, until we're living in the kingdom, there's going to be death. So God's ultimate plan, his and like you said, looking for glimpses of his kindness. Where was he in it? That's such a better way to look at it. And then you get to just watch him work even now as you grieve. And that's so fresh. I mean, the fact that your mom went so quickly and the fact that it's been so recently, you are very much still in the throes of it. And I'm not familiar with exactly the details of your story, but I'm assuming there was some trauma involved in how it all goes down. Death is traumatic. My dad's last days were very hard to watch. And we have to also realize we need to be healed from the event of the trauma of watching that, of going through that. Then there's the grief too. And those are two different things. I mean, my daughter's death was so fast that it very much was like getting in a car accident. And that's traumatic. And there's shock and PTSD that you have to separate that from just the grief itself. So it's not so simple as I'm just sad about my mom dying. There's also hey, this was a really tough thing to watch, and that stresses the system.
Yeah. Well, and that's completely true, because in this particular situation, there was a lot of issues. I'm trying to figure out how much to share, but just with the hospital, a lot of issues, a lot of things that shouldn't have happened, that whatever, and that just adds to the difficulty of it. But like one thing that, I am curious about, because I think what you're saying there, like that separation of the grief versus the traumatic event and events in many cases that all took place, probably is really helpful. But you talked about in this book multiple points where just like where you have gone through personally, just some of these moments of dealing with panic attacks and dealing with feeling so out of control. And I think you had like a moment or two in that where you were spiraling. I think that was the perfect word to describe it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I guess my question for you, and for anybody listening, because that's the whole purpose of this episode, is to help those who are in some sort of situation they can relate.
Right.
Like when they're in that spot of spiraling, like what are the best steps to take? Like what do you do?
What's a playbook for panic? Yeah, right. Well, I think first of all, you have to normalize it. You have to go, hold on, this feels so terrible and catastrophic, and our little lizard brains go, sound the alarm. Stop, slow it down. And what I mean by that is, this is normal. People deal with this. I've never met anybody who didn't spiral. Not one person. My counselor spirals. I have a counselor who's been with my wife and I as a marriage counselor for years. She went through such postpartum depression, she didn't think she was going to make it through. That's a counselor who knows all the things, right?
Yeah.
Tim Tebow spirals. He got cut from a football team and was feeling like his greatest days were behind him. His wife Demi, who was the Miss Universe, she spiraled when they took the crown from her and gave it to the next Miss Universe. Talk about feeling like you're yesterday's news. I got a friend named Dawn Shuri who spirals because she went through infertility for 8 years. Like, that's hard. You want to have a baby, you can't. So I think you normalize it. Everybody spirals. Then, because you feel like something's wrong with me and I'm a reject and I can't handle this thing. And for me, it was feeling like I mentioned, I'm not young anymore. I was always a young pastor. Now I'm the middle-aged pastor, soon to be the old pastor, and freaking out about that. And I think, of course, I'm spiraling. I'm a human and I'm at new territory. And new territory make us feel afraid because we don't have control anymore. And what was comfortable was taken from us. So if we stop and go, how could I expect myself to be good at this? I've never been here before.
Yeah.
I always talk about my son tying his shoes for the first time, and he was so bad at it. And he was like, Dad, I'm so bad at this. And I said, buddy, you've never done this before. You're not going to be good at it. And then he was like, oh, okay. And then you could just keep going. So if I could say to the person in a panic attack or in a struggle for, retirement blues, or, your child just went to kindergarten and now you're having an existential crisis about how good of a mom you were for the first 5 years, I would just say, look, this is new territory. You're not good at it. And you know what? God's got this. And just walk with Jesus. Do this with him and be okay with not being okay. And then I would say, as much as you can do to calm it down, meaning you stay in a keyed up state, you're probably not breathing right, your diaphragm, it's all kind of all this way, you're probably on your phone, your neck's bent over. Put your phone down, take a walk, deep breathing. A big way through panic attacks for me, for a season, full disclosure, Xanax was involved. I had to go to a doctor and get a prescription to put the fire out, and that's fine if it's needed, but then you have to have a long-term plan too. And I'm no longer needing those things, but I had them. Breathing exercises that can
So it's like box breathing or something?
Put out the fire alarm. Yes, it's similar to box breathing. The version I was doing was involving a body scan where you scan all your muscles, you find tension and you release it. So you would lie there for 10 minutes and flex and then let go of your toes, your feet, your calves, your hamstrings, your quads, all while doing deep breathing and breath visualizations, where you see your breath entering your body green and exiting red. So you're breathing out stress, you're breathing in peace, which is all biblical, right? The Holy Spirit's pneuma. At creation, Adam comes into being by God's breath, all of that. So those would be some of the things I would say that are all in greater detail in the book.
Yeah.
Which, this is amazing because, we do talk about finance most of the time. And I feel like this is one of those things where you sit down to pay the bills or you sit down to have a conversation with your spouse, and it's like it gets out of hand really fast because there's so much baggage usually wrapped up in how finances are handled. Yeah. So I feel like this is...
Shame gets touched, family of origin gets touched, guilt gets touched, identity gets touched. And there's a lot of money wrapped up in this book. I talk about the percentage of Americans who don't have a will, which is upwards of 70%, no will and testament. And even the simple act of creating a will cause you to have a different mentality of stewardship and a lighter touch, and then remember you're going to die and not to live like, it's just all about holding on to it. I also talk a lot about in the book how important it is to not view retirement as this finish line that you need to get to as quick as possible. The FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, is this like sort of, if I can just get $1 million in the bank and live off the, whatever. And that just ignores the fact that you were created for kingdom impact.
Yeah.
And whether or not you need a paycheck to work or live or whatever, that's not the point. The point is, if you view the goal of not working, you're forgetting that there was work before there was sin. Adam tended the garden before there was sin. So we need work to thrive at our best, whatever that work is. It could be missions. It could be, doing something for free, but you need something that's a cause to focus your soul on.
Well, yeah. And to that end, I think you mentioned in this book, someone who had was making nearly $1 million in passive income
$760,000 a year, that girl who just wanted to live on a boat. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually think I know who that is. But we had that, we had that same thing. In 2008, I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, and I set out and we did it. In 2 years, we had that business, and I thought I had, again, reached the finish line. It's like we made it. We did the thing. And I went on, like ended up in a major identity crisis because I quickly realized what I think we all know to be true, but we all just want to kind of find out for ourselves that like it doesn't bring satisfaction. And so like the first couple of weeks, it's like, oh, this is great. And then a year rolls on. It's like, this is miserable. I
It's
have
like
no
prison.
purpose.
It's like prison.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Golf every day and just drink 3 margaritas? Like that's going to be your life, you know? Like, but
Yeah.
we see the Corona poster and we just think that's the goal. But that's, like you said, that's a prison sentence because your soul will always despair when it's not connected to you. It's God-given purpose. And you release that purpose, you know, financial independence, retiring early, you know, at 30 or whatever that might be, can be a stepping stone into purpose. That's great.
Yep.
But if that's the goal, your soul, how quickly the soul of man begins to die in pleasant peace and ease. And so if you think pulling away any hard things is going to make you happy, it's going to do the opposite.
Yeah. No, that's 100% what we found. And I've had a lot of, because anybody knows our story, like I started a blog in 2007 talking about money. And so I had a whole bunch of, it was a really small community of basically people creating blogs, talking about personal finance in a very, very little niche world, but one that ended up for the next 5-7 years being incredibly profitable. And I had multiple friends who ended up selling their blogs or websites for 7-8 figures. And almost all of them I watched just wander around like lost puppies after they sold it. Like just, I have no purpose. And like, I'm going to sit in my bank account and count my money, see how much interest I made today. Like it just is not good. It's not what God designed. And what's cool about it is like, that is in and of itself isn't the problem. It's what do you do with that? And how do you use that for the advancement of the kingdom? How do you use that to, you know, do what God has called you to do? Because I'm sure it's more than just sitting and looking at your bank account and counting interest, you know?
Yeah, I think about orcas. You know, when they're in captivity, their dorsal fins bend over because there's not load. The pressure of the open ocean and swimming and hardship and adversity keeps the fin up. So, you know, the person you're talking about who had a cause and no longer did, that's so. I mean, we forget the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. Where just having money and women and wealth and any peacocks brought in from Babylon, it all of a sudden, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. You feel like the soap bubble bursts. But if you can deploy that for a cause like what you guys are doing with helping people and, you know, stewardship and a message and release that God-given destiny, then, but it's going to keep the dorsal fin up. And I think that's really the goal, is finding what God put you on this earth to do, being curious enough and being comfortable with chaos, with confusion enough to keep interested and invigorated. And then it becomes this adventure, right?
Yeah. And I think that brings up something. Are you familiar with Jamie Winship? Have you heard of him yet?
No.
Oh, you need to.
Yeah, you do.
So we did a podcast episode with him, but I mean, just look him up on Google or on YouTube. He's just, anyway, we could spend 15 minutes talking about it, but he said one thing that he said with all this, I think is so potent and powerful, is we as Americans are not comfortable with the mystery of God. We want to control it. We want to know the thing. And there is a mystery to letting go and allowing God's will and obeying in the thing that makes no sense. You know, and I was just reading in Jeremiah with the buying the land. What's the passage? What's that, Jeremiah 32 or 31 or something? Anyway, where he buys this land when the city's being besieged by, I guess it was Babylon or whoever.
Yes.
The Babylonians. Right? Am I getting this right or am I getting all messed up?
It's correct.
Yeah. So it's like, why would you buy land? Why would you do that? That makes no sense. Like you're literally about to be taken over. Anything or it just didn't make any sense. But in that you could sense his kind of confusion, but like, I'm going to obey God in the midst of this thing, and ended up being this prophetic thing leading to what God's going to do in the future. And
they're
so
coming back.
There
it was a declaration. They're coming back to the land. Yeah, you're going to own it. Yeah.
So there's something there about the boldness to do the thing that makes no sense. And it's obviously we see this all throughout the Bible. Like so many of the miracles, it's like makes no sense. That's the worst idea. That's the worst idea, you know, but that is the thing that God is calling us to do. And there's a mystery there, an adventure that comes out of that, you know, by following that. So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he has unorthodox methods, that's for sure. I mean, I don't know about spit and mud in someone's eye as an optical solution for blindness, right?
Right.
And God often chooses the ways that bring him glory by the foolishness of the vehicle. And
Yeah.
so I think we have to be comfortable with complexity and with confusion. He's not the author of confusion, but he does do things that are confusing. A virgin to give birth is not a great strategy, and yet it brought God glory. The foolishness of preaching is what he chooses. The gospel is quite silly. This carpenter 2,000 years ago got crucified by the Romans, and this is somehow supposed to help me? It's like, and if you don't believe, it makes sense that you don't believe because it's foolish. But if you do believe, it's the power of God unto salvation. And even God choosing any of us. I mean, I barely graduated high school. I didn't go to seminary. I have no advanced training. And yet I look at the apostles, and they were fishermen, tax collectors, a zealot, but they had been with Jesus. And that's not to say that we should abandon higher education or not go to seminary, right? I've probably encountered so many godly men and women who have, but I also know it's oftentimes God choosing the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And so many people who upset industries are novices and don't know what they don't know, and that makes them so good coming into. I mean, Henry Ford knew that if he would have asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs said, I don't do consumer research because people will want what I give them. They don't know yet what category is going to exist, right? So I think having that mentality of like, I'm an outsider, I'm an insurgent, I'm going to, a little bit of a Holy Spirit chip on your shoulder. Let's see what God can do,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like experts built the Titanic and amateurs built the Ark.
There you go. That's a good sentence.
Because I'm the same way, like where, I've been working in the financial world all my life, but I'm not the guy with all the financial degrees and everything else. Like pretty much any authority that we have is by the fire and stuff that we've gone through. And that's what we highlight. That's what we share. We share our journey. We share what God has done in our lives, what we've learned in the process. And like we were talking about before, being really curious. I'm insatiably curious to a lot of different things, but especially anything revolving money and in the intersection of that in the Bible and stuff. And so anyway, but that brings me to, I would love to talk to you about this. You were talking about in here, this is really cool because I'd never heard this before in regards to the rich young ruler. So you mentioned your friend Jonathan Pokluda, is that his name?
Pokluda, yeah.
Yeah. So he said, I'm just going to read this. He said, talking about the rich young ruler, said, this man isn't rich, he isn't young, he doesn't rule anything today. Those three defining features he had built his life and self-image on ultimately slipped away. His identity came from what seemed real but was sand. He let what was temporary keep him from what was eternal. That's good, man.
Whew. Yes. Yeah, I think part of spiraling comes from anything that's tampered with that exposes idols in our hearts.
Yeah.
Everything's temporary. I'm not going to be a pastor in heaven. So if my identity is I'm a pastor, that's going to be taken from me. If my identity is I'm young, that's going to be taken from me. If your identity is wealthy, right? Only the identity of a son of the king, a daughter of the king, bought by the blood, those things are only safe things to build your life on. That's the rock. And so the gift or the blessedness of spiraling is that it gives us the chance to sniff out idols of the heart that are keeping us back from the true treasure, which is only found in knowing Jesus. So the man kept his, I have to keep being my rich young ruler. Jesus was offering him the chance of transcendent immortality by coming to follow him. But he chose to hang on to his little idols and missed out on the opportunity to follow the living Messiah into the wild blue yonder.
Yeah, I know. What an opportunity.
And what was he trading? Like, I think about what would he have actually seen or done or experienced or known had he followed Jesus instead?
But have you heard the theory that could be the Apostle Paul?
Oh, really?
I've heard people say they think the rich young ruler could be Paul.
Whoa. No, I haven't heard that.
You can't prove it, but it's interesting.
Wow.
I do love, though, that it says Jesus looked at him and loved him. He wasn't giving him attitude. He wasn't giving him sass. He loved him.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right there is something to just sit on for a while. The idea that, I mean, this is all of humanity, that sometimes we tell God no, and we shouldn't be doing that. We tell our Lord no, and he still comes back to us. Because even like if, let's say for the sake of the argument that it was him, God didn't stop pursuing him. He kept going after him to the point that he was used, and wrote half of the New Testament
13
or whatever.
books of the Bible. Yeah, I love the thought. It's beautiful. We'll find out in heaven. But yeah, I mean, because it's so redemptive, and it does track with the character and nature of God. That he doesn't just say, that was your right of first refusal. I went on to the next, that he's loving. He's the Holy Spirit's been called the Holy Hound of Heaven, who chases us, who doesn't give up on us, who ever present help in time of need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just pulled this quote up based on what we were talking about there. He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep. Where did this verse go?
To gain what he cannot lose.
To gain what he cannot lose. Yeah. And that's, exact what we have going on in that case with the rich young ruler. But anyway, I think it's really fascinating pairing that with like Zacchaeus or something who, again, we don't know exactly what Jesus told him, but he walked out of their dinner, like given whatever, how much was it, 50% away or whatever?
And then four times, paid back 4 times what he had stolen or something like that, right?
Yeah. So there's some sort of like heart change that's happening there. I think that's so cool. But, because we have both sides, both rich, wealthy guys, and one chooses to submit and yield and the other one doesn't. And
it's interesting because I love that parallel, because we don't know that the rich young ruler couldn't have made more. That was maybe just the one-time thing he needed to exercise like he has stayed in the industry, so it's not like the fear we have, he's going to call everything from us. Like, he's safe to trust with whatever he calls us to do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I mean, just like, Abraham and Isaac, it feels like, I don't know, I'm convinced that that's a pretty common test that God gives us all when it comes to any idol that might be in our heart. It's like that thing that maybe you've been praying about forever, whether, we had a long infertility season as well, where it's like, just those things where it's like you chase this. It's like, all right, but is that your number one or am I your number one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how easily ministry can slip into that too,
Yeah.
Your podcast
or
numbers,
business.
your net revenue, all of those things can so easily consume us. And all we need is the twist of that I'm doing this for God, not doing this as God, right? Because that's the easiest mistake to make is turning something he has you doing into who he is.
So good.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming out. So this book, Blessed Are the Spiraling, I read this. There's just a lot of really great nuggets in here. I love the way you think. I love the way you write. And in this book, I would say is particularly beneficial. Like we were talking about, we talked a lot about grief in this particular thing, and I think that's part of it. But a lot of what you talked about here is anything that resembles that midlife crisis stuff, so that, but, as you were saying, that it's a much wider net than that as well. Because like you said, there's so many different seasons and ways that we can be spiraling. And so I would encourage everyone, run out and grab this book. It's really good. And Levi has some authority in this area, as you will see, because you're such an authentic and open book when it comes to so much of this stuff that it just makes it really accessible and it makes it real,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, I really want to help people not end up like Alexander the Great with an empire, but weeping because you can't keep it. Instead, to lean into the tears of Jesus, who, freed us to live for his kingdom and keep it forever.
Yeah. So good.
Love that.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thanks for having me, guys. You guys are amazing.
This is what Sarah had to say about our book, Simple Money, Rich Life.
See this book? Go buy it. Simple Money, Rich Life. Please go buy it. I am 3 chapters in, you guys, and I am mind blown. I'm not kidding you. Go and get this book. I love it so much. I'm almost in tears over here, you guys.
And did you know that you can get a copy for free?
You can get it on Amazon, but we so believe that the church needs this message that if you can cover shipping, we'd love to cover the cost of the book and send you a free copy.
All you need to do is go to seedtime.com/free to get yours.